Let's go and begin, shall we? All right, so the first item is the approval of today's agenda for March 11th.
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
We have a motion and a second to approve today's agenda. Any discussion? All approve, say aye. All oppose? All right. Next, we have the transportation policy minutes from February 11th. Any discussion, or would anybody like to approve minutes from the last meeting? We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from February 11th. Any discussion? All approve, say aye. All opposed? All right, moving along. Next, we have the director's report. Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Transportation Policy Body, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining. This is a nice day outside, and we are missing many of our council members from City of Wichita. Appreciate the quorum. And the quorum is so important, and thank you for making it happen. We have a few items to report to you, starting with our TIP projects. TIP is a committed document, a transportation improvement program. I need to elaborate the acronyms for our new members as well. So Peter is helping update. Peter.
Hey. Per our reasonable progress policy on page 16 of the WAMPO TIP policy, it requires that we have these bi-monthly progress reports for projects programmed to receive WAMPOs of allocated federal funding that are scheduled to receive it in this current federal fiscal year or have received it in a past federal fiscal year, but have yet to finish. So as per our convention, we'll go through the ones that are set to let this year. So we have Bel Air's 53rd Street, Oliver to Woodlawn, multi-use path, anticipated to let in May of this year. And then as a note, as you can all see, you have this in front of you, so you can see it a little better than our slide. Then we have Wichita's Douglas Seneca to Meridian project, anticipated to let in August of 2025. We have Wichita 17th Street North, I-135 to Hillside project, anticipated to let in June of this year. We have Valley Center Seneca Street multi-use path, anticipated to let in September. We have Butler County's Southwest Butler Road improvements from Southwest 170th Street to Southwest 155th Street, anticipated to let in September. We have Wichita's Intelligent Transportation Systems on East 21st Street North, anticipated to let in September as well. Oh, sorry, anticipated to let in early fall of this year. And Redbud Path from Woodlawn to K96. Oh, need to update that name. That name has been updated, correct? The Woodlawn, Redbud Path from Woodlawn to K96.
Yeah, sorry.
No, there's a slight change to the name just to make it clear on its limits. But its anticipated let date is September of 2025. And then we have our transportation improvement program, our current sub-allocated project. This is in your packet on page 12. And here are the non-sub-allocated federal funds in the WAMPO TIP after Amendment 3, also on the large sheet with the other table. And that is everything for our bi-monthly TIP progress report. Any questions?
No, go ahead, Peter.
Any questions on the bi-monthly progress report? Okay. I don't see any questions. In that case, our next item, we have the notification that our federal fiscal year 2025-2028 transportation improvement program of TIP amendment number 4, the public comment period is currently open and started on February 28th and extends to the 14th. And finally, we have our ITS architecture update. So we had a regional ITS architecture stakeholder, a larger meeting of all stakeholders, and an ITS steering committee that was scheduled for the second half of February. we decided to postpone those meetings and reschedule for April 22nd for the stakeholder meeting and the ITS steering committee on May 13th to give more time to develop the deliverables and make sure they're in a very polished state so we can really garner really good feedback at these meetings and make sure that the plan is consistent with what our stakeholders and steering committee has envisioned for that.
All right, thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. We have a comprehensive safety action plan. We have a dedicated staff on safety, Kim Negret.
Good afternoon, TPB. The Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, as you know, is a 5-year plan that the TPB adopted in December of 2023. So our member jurisdictions and community partners have been implementing this plan over the last year and have found a few things that could be updated to increase the usability of the plan and to help us reach our intended target of 0 traffic fatalities and serious injuries. So we called together the Transportation Safety Technical Advisors. They met on February 25th and reviewed the progress of the plan, how it's been implemented over the past year, also discussing potential updates to a couple of the strategies in the plan, and also to set more definitive targets. So Peter actually looked at the data and came up with the annual targets to help us ensure that we would, if achieved, would reach 0 fatalities and serious injuries within 25 years. Peter, do you want to explain those targets, numbers?
Certainly. So these different serious injury and fatality goals, as part of the federal guidance for comprehensive safety action plans, or action plans as they're generally referred to by those staff members, they recommend a target of 0 at some point, some future date and time. Most typically, that's a 25-year horizon. So at our current safety metrics for the region, if we hit these goals every year for 25 years, we would achieve that vision 0. But I would really like to preface that these goals are vision 0 goals. They are aggressive, but the idea is when you're making one of these plans that you have goals that do actually get you to 0 at some point. And so in 25 years, if you do follow these, that's what they will achieve.
Do you want to say what they are?
Oh, certainly. So to do that, if we did reduce fatalities by either 7.5% or 2 fatalities per year, whichever is greater, in 25 years from today, we would accomplish 0 fatalities, along with total serious injuries. So if you reduce serious injuries by 7.5% or 6 serious injuries, whichever is greater, you would reach 0 in 25 years. This is based on the 2021 year observation of those amounts, as those were the ones that were involved in the development of the CSAT plan. Any questions on these Vision 0 goals?
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it.
So we will be pulling together all of the edits and presenting them to the TAC for recommendation for approval to you in the future meeting.
Thank you, Kim. Next item we have is, 4 years ago, we did the regional connections presentations from all the members, listening from each jurisdiction, how each jurisdiction is growing, and we heard from each and everyone, and it was eye-opening to learn from each other. We are doing the same series again this year, 2025 and 2026. So Marky has an update on what type of presentations we are inviting each jurisdictions. Marky.
Yes, thank you, Chad. Just to follow up on that a bit more, we are excited to be announcing our Regional Connections Presentation Series, which, as Chad said, we will be inviting jurisdictions to present on local projects, policies, and programs to this body. So the goals of this include facilitating information exchange, enhancing regional understanding, and encouraging collaboration. And then a bit more into the details. These presentations will be roughly 15 minutes, and we will have them scheduled at our regular TPB meetings. And Then we'll have them subdivided into 4 major categories, which will have growth patterns, planned transportation improvement projects, regional ties between growth patterns and transportation improvements, and then other topics of regional significance. This is really an opportunity to encourage collaboration and discussion amongst all of our jurisdictions within the WAMPO region. So we are looking forward to hearing from everyone, and please feel free to reach out if you would like to schedule one or you know someone who may be interested in scheduling one, and we'd love to find a time for that. Any questions?
Thank you, Marky. Appreciate it. And you have any comment?
I think it's a great idea because I always love hearing from other jurisdictions as far as, what's going on, their growth pattern, and just different things that are happening in their communities. Great.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Chad and staff for all those updates. Next, we have the public comment opportunity. So if anybody would like to speak from the public, please state your name. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, I'm public. My name is Jane Burns, and many of you have heard me speak about safety. Last week, there was a transportation safety conference with that logo, Transportation Safety Conference, Drive to Zero, Kansas Traffic Deaths. At the table where I sat, there were lots of highway patrol, but not as many local transportation folks as I would have expected. One of the speakers pointed out that on January 29th, Kansas Day, an airplane from Wichita fell into the Potomac River and everybody died. In the hours that followed, the response was immediate and comprehensive. The National Transportation Safety Board mobilized its full investigative team. Federal, state, and local agencies worked together in a coordinated effort, divers into frigid waters and all. That same speaker pointed out that every day in the United States, more than 100 people die in car crashes, the equivalent of an airplane falling from the sky every 24 hours. Over 40,000 people lose their lives on our roadways annually, yet no federal safety board investigates. No transportation secretary makes a statement declaring the deaths unacceptable. No changes are required before the next tragedy. Instead, we have police reports that assign blames to individuals, insurance claims that process payouts, and a public that shrugs at the inevitability of it all. The thing is, this speakers group has realized that car crashes have lots of considerations. They've had 18 cities around the United States put together crash analyses studios. There are not only transportation professionals, but other perspectives as well. In the first 18 studio sessions in the last couple of years, that were totally local, totally thorough, they found the following contributing factors: high-speed road design in urban areas. That's called a strode. That's a combination of a highway and a street. Design that inadequately accounts for people walking and biking. I live in Pete's district. Pete Meitzner is my county commissioner, and he knows that I live in a walkable neighborhood. I walk for health, for neighborliness, for shopping. And when I'm going shopping in my walkable neighborhood, those are busy streets where I need to get across the street. It's a safety hazard for the 1/3 of Wichitans and Kansans who do not drive. That's kids, seniors, disabled, low income, trendy people. Anyway, designs that inadequately account for people walking and biking, and dangerous intersection designs. I'm suggesting, in fact, I'm asking for you all, because you're transportation decision makers. Kansas spends $2 billion a year on highways. Can you put some chump change toward crash analyses to prevent other crashes? I understand that's on the comprehensive safety plan, and I'd ask for you all to authorize it, fund it, and adopt it. Are there any questions? I'm happy for questions. In a town like Terry's wonderful town, they don't have to worry about anything except those great big trucks that go down Main Street. Traffic is careful and thoughtful and neighborly. Wouldn't that be valuable if it were like that everywhere? Watching out for health seekers, folks who can't drive or don't want to drive. Like some of my grandchildren, they won't get driver's licenses. So, questions, comments? Crash Analysis Studio.
All right, I thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other public members of the public that would like to speak? Anybody online? All right, not seeing anything, we will move on to our action items. We do have one action item. It's the Regional Transit Implementation Plan. Peter?
Thank you, Marky. Good afternoon again. So Bill Dro with SRF will be talking here shortly, but I just wanted to give a brief introduction to the plan here. So in July 2023, WAMPO entered into an agreement with SRF and their subconsultants to develop a regional transit implementation plan with a draft plan completed this past February for your consideration. And again, SRF will go through, or Bill Tro with SRF will go through the plan in more detail, but I wanted to have two items highlighted in here. And I've also put little tabs on the plan in front of you so you can see the pages I'm referring to. So first, the plan looks at a framework for initiating a regional transit authority, and then also discusses some transit service alternatives. So on the blue tab, it takes you to the governance options for service expansion. And in this section, there is a framework provided for how a regional transit authority could be implemented. It looks at the State Metropolitan Transit Authority Act that established the Topeka Transit Metropolitan Authority, and it details guidance on boards, contract authority, hiring a transportation manager, everything that would go along with trying to establish a new regional authority that would need to be taken care of if someone, or if there was the appetite to do so. And then after that, it lists kind of a step-by-step framework for establishment of authority with multiple interested jurisdictions. So if you are curious, it's a very comprehensive read on how that might be done for the WAMPO region, in particular in Kansas. So another key takeaway I want to talk about, a few pages down on page 12, there's an important note on funding. And the key takeaway on there, and there's a little table on page 12 that shows this, is that for Federal Transit Authority funding, within any metropolitan area, there is only one designated recipient of FTA funds. Presently, Wichita Transit is the designated recipient. There are other alternatives to fund transit. However, your largest consistent formula fund will be from the Federal Transit Agency. So for paths forward on that, you'd either establish maybe a regional authority, or you'd make agreements with the designated recipient if there were to be some shared transit initiative, like a bus route that extends beyond Wichita city limits. And then I just wanted to hit on to the conceptual transit service alternative. So beyond maybe establishing a regional transit authority, from pages 48 to 61, noted by the orange tab there, there's one-page summaries of transit alternatives. I just put a couple examples on here. Option 1A, the Derby Express service, goes from Derby, stops over by Spirit Air Systems, and takes you from there, it goes down to downtown Wichita. On that same page, you can get a generalized cost estimate and an estimated annual ridership that was done after a market analysis. There's 15 total of these options that are in these pages. I wanted to mention just a couple more. Option 7, collaborate with transportation network companies like Uber or Lyft. Often, in many circumstances, they can provide some of the cheapest per rider service if you have them out where you are and you can get enough drivers and to actually support that service. Option 8, establish of a van pool service. That's on page 59. With that one, you might work with an employer and then another third company. For example, in the state of Nebraska, they contract with Enterprise to provide van pool services. And you can coordinate together to share costs between employer, the employees paying a small fee, and providing that van pool service maybe to specific areas of employment. These are just 3 examples. There's 15 total in there. Again, where it's applicable, you can see the route map that looked promising, and they drew that out for you so you can see. With that, after those highlights, I'm going to turn it over to Bill, and he's going to go through the plan, kind of a more brief overview, but I thought those 2 places, if you leave here today and you see those in the plan, those would be the 2 places I'd look first.
I could probably just start with, are there any questions? Because I think the Peter.
Bill, I think you're muted still.
Nope. Hello.
We're not able to hear you.
I hear Bill online, FYI.
Can you hear me?
I can hear Bill.
Okay. Can people in the room hear me?
Sounds like that might be the problem.
Yeah, I think that might be the problem. Turn up the volume.
Bill, we're checking some things out if you could hear us. Give us a check, audio check.
How we doing? Can we hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Peter, did you have the slides?
Yes, Bill, we have slides ready to go.
Okay. Okay. If you could pull those up for people online to see.
So can someone share online as well?
We'll share those here for you, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Or I can do it here if you like.
Sure.
Bill, we do have them shared on,
Okay.
but you don't see anything at the moment.
I don't see anything. I'm sorry.
We can see them online. I guess Bill
Oh.
can't, but
Oh, sorry. I had to press another button. I'm sorry. I hadn't seen that one before. Okay. Peter, if you could then advance them as I talk about each one. Understanding that we've been working on this project for a decent amount of time. I wanted to go back through and just start a little bit at the beginning, give a very brief background as to the work that we have been doing and kind of the intent of what the study was about. So if we go to the next slide. is that when we started everything out here, we essentially had a project that we wanted to address 4 critical questions. And those questions are listed here. And understanding, we wanted to make sure we understood what was available in the region for public transportation service, because it's not only Wichita Transit. There are other and Sedgwick County Transportation. There are other transportation providers within the region, and we wanted to provide a summary of each of those, because we see each of those as a potential opportunity to help resolve the regional transportation and regional travel movement issues that we have identified within the region. And then the second question was looking at each of these services that are available, also understanding the market. Do we address the service needs, or does the current service fill all of the needs that we have within the region? And this is generally a pretty easy question to ask ourselves, because the answer is always no. There is the need for more public transportation service within the region. And then we got into the question of, okay, you said that we have gaps within the region. Where might those be? That came out of the market analysis. And then what are some of those opportunities and options that may be out there to address those needs? And what might they cost? Because I think we all understand is that we are not going to be implementing anything that we cannot afford to do within the region. And then the final question is, well, where can we find money to pay for that service? So those are the 4 critical questions that we addressed throughout the course of the work that we did. If we go to the next slide. So that we also established goals, and those goals are just boiled them down to, we want to look for opportunities to improve the commute from the outlying communities into employment opportunities in Wichita. We want to provide those folks that are living in the outlying communities more opportunity for travel, not necessarily just for work, but travel for all of the needs and the bucket of services that they need to get access to. Understanding that over the course of the last maybe 15 to 20 years, that there has been a growing level of opportunity for employment outside of Wichita, but there is very little opportunity to commute to those particular employment opportunities. Let's look at options to improve those opportunities to get to those workplaces outside of Wichita. And then the final goal is to make sure that as we're looking at our needs, that we're looking also at that appetite to fund improvements to service, because again, looking at service alternatives that are well beyond the means that we're willing to pay within the region, that's not a real answer to those needs that we have within the region. Next slide. So along with those goals that we also developed, to address those goals, that we developed a series of service recommendations. Peter touched on a few of those, understanding that there are, we have identified, as Peter said, there were 15 different ideas out there. Some of those ideas have multiple geographic applications. So we got into some service alternatives that could be extending fixed route service to Derby. That's pretty discrete in what it is. But then we also had services or an alternative that was to provide additional funding to Sedgwick County Transportation so that they could provide more service, which would provide opportunities in all of the communities across the region that Sedgwick County Transportation serves. So it was kind of a mixture of very relatively discrete and very broad alternatives that we have been looking at over the course of the work. Next slide, please. So that those alternatives that we had looked at were essentially categorized or grouped into 3 themes. And those themes went directly along the same alignment as the goals. Our first theme is, hey, let's look for those opportunities to provide more opportunity to get to work in Wichita from outside of Wichita. let's look for those concepts that would provide more opportunities for folks that live outside of Wichita to travel around the region, travel through the region, and get to any kind of service that they need to get to. And let's look for those opportunities that provide, you may call it the reverse commute, to getting people from the employment or the employment pool that we have in Wichita, or the employment pool that we have within each of the communities, to those more suburban employment opportunities that we have across the region. But many of them are outside of where we have regular service each day. Next slide. So as we went through and discussed with our stakeholders group throughout the course of doing the work, we ultimately developed two groups of service recommendations. So the one group was what we were calling as our shorter term concepts. And these are concepts in that whole group that Peter had introduced and I had talked about a little bit. Those concepts that received positive feedback through a stakeholder outreach and representative jurisdiction survey that we did, that we sent out a survey to each of the jurisdictions with a list of all of these various service options that we are considering, and asked for their feedback as to, is this an option that you think would work for you? Is this an option that you can support? Is this an option that you can support as a provider? Or is this an option that you would support as a partner working with other jurisdictions within the region? And the information that we received through that survey and through the various meetings that we held and discussions that we had became our shorter term concepts. And then understanding that we didn't get feedback from every jurisdiction that we sent requests to, but we looked at a number of ideas as I'll put them in my very plain terms, as what we thought were good ideas that also likely fit the issues and the needs that we have within the region. But we didn't have a whole lot of feedback from the decision makers within those jurisdictions. So we put those into a category that we called our aspirational recommendations. Those things that are good ideas, but are going to take more time to develop, support, understanding, funding, all of those things. And we thought that creating these groups was a relatively conservative approach to make sure that we're documenting all of the good ideas that we think that there are, but understanding is that we're not going to be able to implement each and every one of those in a very short term. And those that we can are those that have support from each of the jurisdictions, because as we look at providing additional transportation service, there are essentially four funding sources. There's, that Peter had mentioned, that there's the federal government, there's the state, there's the locality, and there are fares. And that we are not going to be able to implement new service within the region without a local contribution to whatever the cost of that service may be. And we looked at various providers in the region that have very different cost structures and cost models as we looked at the range of alternatives that we had evaluated as part of the study. So let's go to the next slide. So what we're showing here are what we have as our recommendations for the shorter term improvements within the region. And you can see is that not every jurisdiction has a short-term recommendation attached to it. Again, these are ideas that we had evaluated throughout the course of the study, and out of the survey that we had distributed again to community leaders in each of the jurisdictions. So it could have been the mayor, it could have been the council, it could have been the commissioners for Sedgwick County or Butler County or Sumner County. That if we receive positive feedback that yep, this is something that we think we are interested in at least participating in as a partner, that we included those items in our shorter term recommendations. Most of these are more limited in nature, but we do have some relatively, well, we have ideas that could be implemented in a relatively short period of time. Next slide. But then we also have a very robust list of aspirational ideas. And for the most part, you can see is that each of the communities that we've identified and marked with the red circles, that those are longer term aspirational ideas, and that these are not situations where, hey, we're saying that each of these communities should create and provide their own public transportation service, but these are communities where it makes sense that if we want to provide more service to them, it's more logical to provide that service through additional funding to Sedgwick County Transportation or a more regional transportation provider. And then the yellow circles are those that maybe various communities coming together to provide more public transportation service, or individual communities that are partnering with an organization like Wichita Transit for those services that would be express service from, say, Derby into Wichita to provide more access to employment or more access to services that you can get to through the transit system in Wichita, but we need to get there first. But then that is a service that you're partnering with Wichita Transit, but the local portion of that funding would come from the jurisdiction that is gaining the additional access to public transportation service. So these are longer term concepts that could be implemented within the region. Okay, next slide. So as Peter also talked about a little bit, was we did also look at, okay, there's a whole lot of jurisdictions within the WAMPO region. The idea of each and every one of them considering or adding public transportation service for their particular community gets to be a little bit inefficient. We wanted to look at the range of ideas that you could consider for governing regional transportation service within the area. So if we go to the next slide. And why are we, and as we're looking at that governance structure, it doesn't need to be a situation where there's one provider doing everything. That we could also look at multiple additional providers in the region that are sharing some element of everything that they do each day, each week, each month to provide public transportation service within their community or outside of their community. And the chart here on the right is intended to show you those things that a transit agency has to do each day, each week, each month to provide that service, to market that service, to make sure that there's funding for that service, reporting of all of the ridership and costs associated with that service. That there are a pretty broad array of things that have to come along with providing public buses and public transportation on the street. So if we go to the next slide. But where Peter had talked about, well, yes, in the document, we do identify those steps and kind of the concept of a regional transportation or transit authority, that's not the only method that we could really look at for governance or coordination of transportation service amongst the various jurisdictions that we have within the region. That the intent of this graphic is to show you that, well, on one end of the spectrum, we have independent operators within each of the communities that want to provide some level of transportation service. The other end of the continuum is that we have one agency throughout the entire region, and that agency may be governed by an authority. And that all, I think ultimately is the right side of what I'm calling is my coordination continuum. And the things that we look at at each of these various steps that there may be along that continuum is those agencies or those communities that want more transportation service, what level of local control do they want? And then we also bring into the argument cost effectiveness, because if there's every one of the jurisdictions that wants service is providing their own, it's not very cost effective because there's just duplication of a lot of different services. So in the document, we went through and talked about the cost effectiveness and that balance of cost effectiveness and local control and the various interim opportunities that there may be for coordinating service across the region. Okay, next slide, please. So I guess this is just kind of a little bit more of an overview of those options that may be out there. Again, each of these bullet points kind of steps down a little bit more of the, I have to make sure that I'm considering control, giving up a little bit of control as I'm working with more entities in the organization. But then there's also that opportunity for improved cost effectiveness as we go through these. Okay, next slide. This is just, I went through and kind of for each of the options provided a little bit of, well, how well suited is this particular opportunity for a scenario of how we might provide service across the region. I can go through these if people want, but I think the idea of having this and WAMPO folks having access to this, that'll gives them a little bit more information as to how appropriate each of these basic ideas of using an interlocal agreement, using a joint powers agreement, or going to a regional authority suits a particular scenario. Okay, next slide. Oh, I guess that was it. So I guess we have provided the document to WAMPO for review, and we have worked through with them any updates that they have requested to the document. I'm hoping that some of you have had the opportunity to review it, and I'm ready for any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Bill or Peter? I'm not seeing any.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying. The governance section does include more options than just implementing a regional transit authority. I just wanted to ensure that some of the feedback we had on the plan was addressed. So that is in the plan if you are so curious. And then that brings us to our action options. We can approve the regional transit implementation plan as presented, not approve the regional transit implementation plan, or approve with specific changes. The TAC recommendation was to approve the regional transit implementation plan as presented.
So would anybody like to make a motion to approve as presented, or if you had any changes?
I'll motion to approve as presented. Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the regional transit implementation plan as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, next we have item 5, discussion and updates. Appointments of executive committee and projects selection committees. So in your package, you'll see the names of both those committees. So I appreciate everybody that agreed to stay on, or new members that are on the board, on the committees as well. So I appreciate that. So next we have item B, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050 public comment period. We have Nick.
Thank you, Chair. As you may know, we are now in the public comment period for Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050, aka MTP 2050. All of the draft chapters and appendices are now available online. And there are about 4 copies of the main chapters around the table for you to peruse on this occasion, if you so choose. And then online, we also have all of the appendices, which are considerably longer. There's also an executive summary of 20 pages in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese online that you can reference. And online too, there is the form for submitting comments. And the public comment period runs through April 7th. This body voted to release the draft MTP for public comment back on February 11th. And after the public comment period, WAMPO staff will work to address whatever comments received require addressing or deemed to require addressing. And then once any necessary edits are made, it will be presented to the TAC for a recommendation on April 28th and to the TPB for a final vote on May 13th. Keeping in mind that the last MTP was approved in June 2020, which means that we do need to have it before June 2025, adopting a new one. And after approval, the only thing left will be one last round of public engagement, round 5 of presenting the final plan to the general public. The vision of MTP 2050 is to enhance connectivity in a way that supports equitable development of a safe, reliable, multimodal transportation network that enriches the quality of place within the WAMPO region. This is served by the goals of making sure things are safe and reliable, equitable and accessible, connected and multimodal, and engaging in environmental and financial stewardship. Just a quick look at how the chapters appear on www.wampo.org/MTP2050. One tab for the 7 chapters and one for the 14 appendices. As a reminder from the presentation last month, the main chapters are plan, purpose, and development, regional trends, existing conditions, system management, system performance report, which is where you'll find the performance measures, including the required federal performance measures, as well as some regional performance measures. Chapter 6, the financial plan, which demonstrates how the plan is fiscally constrained, doesn't use more money than is anticipated to be available. And finally, chapter 7, project selection and list, which contains the project list that this body approved back on the 12th of November. And now we are going to go through half of the appendices and just give you some overview on those, since last time we gave you an overview of the 7 main chapters. Now we're going to go through 7 of the 14 appendices, and next month our intention is to go through the other 7. Apologies that we're not going through them in exact order, but the ones in bold here, A, B, D, H, J, K, and N are the ones that we're going to show you today. And again, not quite in that order, so we're going to call out the order as we go through, including the letters. Appendix A, Plan Development. It provides a brief overview of the processes and methodologies that were used to create the plan. It briefly touches on public engagement, but Appendix B will go into that in more detail, and that will be later in this presentation. And it documents data collection and our coordination with stakeholders. It outlines how the goals and priorities for the plan were established to ensure transparent decision-making and compliance with regulatory requirements. And it is an overall guide to the planning process. Appendix D, project scoring model. As many of you will recall, from September 15th, 2023 to February 2nd, 2024, we had a call for projects for MTP 2050. All of the projects received for that call for projects were scored according to criteria that were adopted by the TPB back on October 12th, 2021 in each of 8 categories: bridge rehabilitation / replacement projects, traffic management technologies, roadway reconstruction / modernization, roadway expansion, i.e. adding through lanes to a roadway, creating a new roadway, multi-use trails and bicycle facilities, pedestrian facilities, safe routes to school projects, i.e. bicycle and pedestrian projects that are near a school and are part of a safe routes to school plan once one has been developed. We're working on getting those developed. And public transit projects. Each of these categories has a unique scorecard that was used for projects in that category, but with many elements in common between them. And WAMPO staff and consultants came up with a model for automating this in order to come up with scores that could be submitted to the project selection committee to aid them in their decisions, though they were not bound to go by the project scores only necessarily. Appendix J. Sorry.
Thank you, Nick. I'll go through this one very quickly. Appendix J is the Regional Transit Implementation Plan that we just exhaustively went through. So that will make that appendix. So I will go ahead and go through this one real quick. And then Appendix K, our active transportation plan. So this one will be our active transportation plan. It will be a strategic guide for promoting and enhancing walking, biking, and other non-motorized transportation options in the region. Its goal is to improve safety, accessibility, and connectivity for pedestrians, bicycle riders, and users of other active modes of transport. The plan will ID infrastructure needs. For example, bike lanes, sidewalks, and trails, and set forth policies to encourage active transportation as a healthy, sustainable alternative to driving. Plan will promote equity by ensuring all communities can access safe and convenient active transportation options. Then finally, we have our Appendix N, our economic development analysis. So as you all are aware, in 2022, we hired WSU, Center for Economic Development and Business Research, to assist in a comprehensive economic analysis of the region. We looked at 7 major economic sectors identified by the Greater Wichita Partnership. And I think we've gone through most of these during our various TPB and TAC meetings: our advanced manufacturing, aerospace, agriculture, energy, healthcare, IT systems and support, and transportation logistics. In addition, it includes socio and economic and demographic reports on each of the 22 municipalities in the region and 1 report describing the region as a whole. And then Appendix H, the regional ITS architecture. So the Regional Intelligent Transportation Systems Architecture, or ITS architecture, it's a structured framework that coordinates the planning and deployment of intelligent transportation technologies across the region. It ensures efficient, safe, and compatible use of ITS infrastructure, devices, and data sharing practices among ITS operators. And we began the process of updating the ITS architecture in 2024, which is its first full update since 2006. Typically, federal guidelines call for this update every 5 years, and the updated architecture includes plans for future ITS projects and thorough needs and gaps analysis that IDs the regional priorities and ensures that deployed technology supports regional transportation goals. And then I will pass this mic over to Marky.
Okay, the last appendix that we're going to talk about today, and I will just very briefly mention this one, is Appendix B, which is the public involvement and engagement summary. This just gives more details on the public input that was received and all of the engagement initiatives that we did throughout the 2-year process. Just to share again, there are 5 rounds in total of public engagement for the plan. The first 3 built an understanding of public desires. Those are when we had those surveys. The 4th round, which is in progress, is our public comment period. And then we will be doing a 5th round after the plan is approved to introduce the finalized plan to the public. And then just to state again what Nick had mentioned, we are currently in our 4th round of public engagement, which is our 30-day public comment period. Hopefully everyone has seen my emails and also shared them with everyone they have ever met. Please take a look, please comment. Feedback really is very crucial to make sure that this plan matches the goals for the region. Along with trying to advertise this through social media, we have another forms digitally. We are hosting 2 events to go over the plan in more detail. Our first will be a virtual public meeting tomorrow at noon. Hope to see everyone there. And then we'll also be having an open house on Wednesday, March 26th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. That will be just a come and go event. You can engage, mingle, and we'll have some nice poster boards displaying the contents of the plan. And then we are also seeking any other engagement opportunities. If you know of any meetings or events that you would like to invite WAMPO to attend, please let us know. We'd love to do that. We went to 2 yesterday, which were great. I will thank our chair, Mayor Kessler, again for letting us speak at the Hayesville Council meeting yesterday. And I think that's about all I have. Are there any questions, either about public comment or the rest of the draft plan?
I just want to say I appreciate you coming to our council meeting last night. So
Thank you.
anybody have any questions? Oh, go ahead.
This is on 50 plan, right?
Correct, yes.
I'm not an expert on it. It's quite a big document, but remind me, so on page 177, if you're looking, in 78, there's a color code of projects. But I'm kind of aware that the canal route is being looked at seriously by KDOT, and I don't see that anywhere on. I would assume between now and 2050, it would have gotten attention. And also know that the intersection of 54 and the canal route is another one of concern. So is that under a different area, or is that something that should have been included in this?
That's a great question. Thank you, Commissioner. Staff has wrapped up all the studies in a category called studies in general, because most studies come in various parts of the region. So they're categorized into one complete, but we're happy to elaborate that and explicitly include that as well.
Well, KDOT's an important partner in all of this, and I think those are a couple of projects that are important to them, to at least for us as the MPO to recognize.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, Nick or Mike? If I'm going down a different lane of traffic, I'll be glad to, we can just cancel me out.
Was that a pun? Different lane of traffic there?
Yeah. Way to pick it up. Russ. Okay. Well.
Yeah, so as Chad mentioned, the studies will be captured in a different part of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The project itself has not been conceived or scoped yet, so that's why you're not seeing it yet. Yeah, correct. Very heads up comment though, Commissioner.
All right, thank you for those questions. Any other questions or comments? All right, we will move along. So the next item is item 6, committee and partnership updates. The next executive committee is on May 8th. That is at 11 o'clock. Item B, Kansas Department of Transportation, KDOT, Mike.
I don't have any updates for today. Did want to congratulate you on your appointment. So
Yeah,
it's great to
thank
have you at the head of the table. Yeah, I have nothing from Topeka here today.
Okay. I'll be there tomorrow for something else, so. All right, item C, the Wichita Metro Division, KDOT, JB.
Hi there. Beginning March 17th, northbound I-135 to eastbound K-96 is anticipated to be closed till March 20th for a guardrail installation. Wednesday, March 12th, northbound I-135 to eastbound K-96 will be channelized to survey the existing shoulder. Westbound K-96 will have one lane closed on Monday, March 10th to Wednesday, March 12th for paving project using asphalt to widen the median. Another update is KDOT has updated their website. It can still be reached at the same URL location, www.ksdot.gov. You can learn more about construction updates in the Wichita area by visiting the news tab and selecting the District 5, navigating to the Wichita Metro page.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have item D, the Federal Highway Administration. Is Rick here?
No, Javier Almada here, Federal Highways, Kansas Division. Don't have an update for you all today.
All right, thank you. Then the Federal Transit Administration. Anybody here for that?
Hi, Jared Austin with Federal Transit Administration. Only other update, you all probably already heard the news that FTA along with FHWA are good with moving forward and processing your STIP amendments and all that good stuff. So I know those were on hold for a while. You probably already got notified by KDOT, but just wanted to reiterate that. And that's all I have.
All right, that's good news. Thank you. All right, next we have other business, which we have none. And then adjournment. Would anybody like to adjourn today's meeting?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All right. Good seeing everybody today. Oh.